Before we get into Jaime Munguia versus Canelo, Boxing 24/7 had an interesting article about Canelo. They were asking, how would Canelo fare against top fighters in the 80s? I'm going to change the question a little bit. I want to know how Canelo would do against top middleweights in the 90s. I have Canelo as top pound-for-pound fighter in the world today. I'm a fan of Canelo, and I think he'll be very competitive in any era. But when you talk about the 90s, we had Jerry McClellan, Julian Jackson, James Toney, Roy Jones Jr., Mike McCollum, and we can't forget about Nigel Benn, Chris Eubank, and B-Hop. And like I said, I think Canelo will be very competitive in these fights. I can even see him beating Nigel Benn. Julian Jackson was the biggest puncher I ever seen pound for pound. But the thing about some big punchers, they can't take a punch. Julian Jackson was susceptible to body shots, and when I think of it, his chin wasn't that great either. I think the fighters that would give Canelo problems in the 90s were the slick fighters and the guys with speed, like a Roy Jones Jr. and James Lights Out Toney. If I had to pick a middleweight that I think definitely would have beat Canelo at that time, it's James Toney. James Toney had a good chin, decent power, could fight inside real good, was a master of slipping punches then countering. Also had a great jab, would use feints to set up his offense. In the early 90s, James Toney at one point was the pound-for-pound top fighter in the world over Pernell Whitaker and De La Hoya. It doesn't seem like it now because James Toney sounds like he has marbles in his mouth, but him and Roy Jones are all-time greats. Roy Jones has speed and power and reflexes. Those two never lost a fight in the middleweight division, and those two guys, I think, would beat Canelo. At middleweight, I would love to hear your opinions. There's no wrong opinion here. It's more of a compliment to Canelo because they're matching up with great fighters with different eras. That's when you know you arrived. We will continue this in another video. In other boxing news, is Jaime Munguia destined to fight Canelo Alvarez? Former undefeated WBO junior middleweight champ Jaime Munguia says he's ready to fight Canelo when Canelo is ready. Personally, I don't think Jaime Munguia is not going to be ready for a couple of years. I say the fight will happen in 2022. So I think Munguia will do what he's doing right now. He'll constantly get better. He'll wait in line for his title shot. The fight's not going anywhere. It's a big fight. If Munguia can stay undefeated and get better, even though he looks better in his last fight since Eric Morales took over, I still don't think he's ready for Canelo. Canelo's on top of his game right now. But what I do like about Munguia, he's young and hungry. Now the Triple G fight, I think Munguia can win because I think Triple G's done. He's past his prime, and all he do is want to fight Canelo for the money. He know he can't beat Canelo. A good thing about Munguia and Canelo, they're with the same promoter, so the fight won't be hard to make. That's why I feel there's no rush to make this fight, but I do think it's going to happen. I just think Munguia needs more seasoning. He brought out Triple G, Charlo, and Canelo. What about Derevchenko? That'd be another good fight for Munguia. That would be a war, Munguia and Derevchenko. Maybe I'm just being a greedy fan. Anyway, let me know what you think. When will Jaime Munguia be ready to face Canelo? And how do you think Canelo fits in with the middleweights in the 90s? I think he fits in well. I just got a couple of guys beating him. But you know, those fights could go either way. Leave your thoughts and comments below. Jay Beezy, subscribe to the channel. I'm gone.